sometimes it makes you completely uncomfortable. But I think taking those little small steps that make you feel uncomfortable to get out of your comfort zone actually lays the groundwork and the preparation for when you have opportunities.
I'll have what she's having.
Welcome to another edition of
She Talks Confidence
Podcast.
Welcome back. This is Tony. As usual, this is the She Talks Confidence podcast, and I am back with another fantastic guest, and I can't wait to get into it. Do you know why? Because it's about pivoting. It's about grit, grace, and growth. I'm stealing your title of your book, by the way. We're going to talk about that. Her book is called The Power of Pivot, and it's Ashley Davis. Ashley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing great. I love having somebody on that reflects the way I see things and the way I have coached and the way I have done therapy for so many years. And a lot of it has to do with our perspective and then not just wanting to change, but putting things in place to change. And I think that's an important part of it. Ashley's got a book out soon, right? Just like this week coming out, the 7th?
Tuesday. No, the 7th. Yes. Tuesday.
Yeah. So April 7th, because we're recording on April the 1st. So happy April Fool's Day. Her book is called The Power of Pivot. And I just want to read a little bit. It's in a world where change is constant and uncertainty is inevitable, adaptability sets you apart. Cultivating emotional intelligence, grit, grace, and courage can turn these pivotal moments into opportunities for extraordinary growth. And Ashley has had a lot of experience with this. She has been in politics, which right there, that'll separate the women from. She's been a strategist, a global keynote speaker, trusted advisor, national security and leadership. And you are a co-CEO of the Belizean Grove?
Yeah. So
are you really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I know
I'll
what
tell you that
is.
story too.
Yeah, good.
Well,
I want to hear that because again, as a girl dad and as a women's advocate, when Judge Sotomayor had to resign from that, I thought,
you really do know what Belizean Grove is.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I didn't think, I thought you were using it to the Belizean Grove.
No, because
it was a thing for her.
Yeah, because it was something started, and Susan something, I can't remember her name. Yeah, she started it because of the Bohemian Grove, the big old foo-foo men's club. She's, if you guys can have one, we can't have one. It reminded me of the Little Rascals. Like Darla starts her own club. She's the Bohemian Club, was the Little Rascals. Yeah.
And it was in Belize. And it's funny because it's one of those things, just like the Bohemians, let's not talk about it because there are very significant ladies that were in it. That are in it. But I would have to say that when Sonia was going through her confirmation, it stopped being a secret because she just stepped down,
but the thing is that, and she got a lot of flack for being in it. And I'm like, talk about double standards. Give me a break.
Exactly.
It's insane. Yeah. So I find that fascinating. So being that you have that experience and the strategist and being in politics for that long, the lessons could be like chapters long, right? Volumes of lessons and life lessons and growing up and stuff. And I talk about confidence on the show and also about you sitting down and writing a book. What actually got you to the point where you're like, I got to put this down in a book because I know this works. It's worked for me before. And I know I can help women or whomever with what I know and putting it down in a book and putting it out there. What was the journey into that?
Sure. And Tony, I don't even think I realized that I did all of this planning, so to speak, when I was getting ready to make big decisions in my life, or now that I do it for other people as well, whether it's companies or leaders. But I've done it all my life. So I'm from small town Pennsylvania, like outside of Butler, Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. And I never really realized that, okay, something starts working in my mind that I want to do something. And it doesn't like pop in my mind overnight. It just starts planting a seed. And sometimes it takes me 4 years to get there. Sometimes I do something I call the tiny pivot, which is I'm on this path to do one thing, but it's not going to work. So I do something else. And it was actually during COVID, ironically, and it wasn't like I was sitting there looking for something to do, but I was working with some speakers bureaus because I do a lot of political speeches.
Mhm.
So you can imagine that during election years or especially presidentials, everyone wants to know what's going to happen and how it's going to, in fact, impact their business. And so my speakers bureaus were like, listen, you have to speak about something else because politics isn't going to keep you busy enough. That's when I started thinking about this, and I didn't know how to talk about it, and
Mhm.
it took me at least 6 months to really put in place the plan, the framework, the guidebook, so to speak, of what the book became. And so I would speak about it on stage, but I realized it was something that I could turn into a book. And I believe me, it scares me to death. I do TV all the time, but I'm on TV and I talk about political stuff. I don't talk
Mhm.
about myself. So this is something outside
Right.
my comfort zone. And when I talk about the grit and the courage part of this, of my subtitle, it's really that. It's really putting yourself out there to actually be able to get to where you wanna go. And it's not just a woman's book, but it is a lot of women actually probably have the ability to relate more than even men do
Mhm.
because one of the things I always talk about when I wanted to go on to business school, I wanted to get on corporate boards, and a lot of women these days wanna get on corporate boards, and so I'm like, "How am I gonna get there?" And I was turning 40, 39 actually, and I had a 6-year-old at home. I was running a business, and I decided to go back to business school, and so I found one that I could do. I went to Georgetown, but it was, like, module driven, and so I could do it by being a mom, and you can imagine the guilt I felt because it being module driven, I was gone for 2
Yeah.
weeks at a time, every
Mhm.
couple months, and dads don't relate that same way.
No, not at all. I talk about that a lot with a lot of different guests that I have and a lot of different women that I have coached. That guilt of not being there. The important
Yeah,
thing is you have to prioritize yourself in your journey in the balance in being a mom because I completely agree and any guy that's being honest with you will say the same thing. We don't have that gear. We don't think really in that
no,
gear. I had it in some sense, just because I was the only one around for my daughter, and I chose to stay at home and have a job where I can work out of the house so I could pick her from school and stuff. But overall,
right.
it's with women and that the inherent mother guilt that comes from not putting everybody else first but yourself. And so I can see where that would be the case. That being said, you going through and doing your modules and you going through and doing your speaking and doing your traveling, how did you reconcile that?
I am a very big believer in this, and believe me, like, for everyone that's viewing this, I get it, not every situation is the same. However, I knew that for me to be the best mom, I needed to have challenges in my life as well, and my
Mhm.
challenges weren't just raising my son, and he knows this, I can talk about very openly. I had to have other challenges in my life or other things in my life that I wanted to do as well, so I felt good about myself, because otherwise, I wasn't gonna be the best mom. Yes, as we were talking about earlier, my son plays hockey, so we have 110 hockey games between August and March,
I know it's
and
nuts,
I
right?
make out of those
Yeah.
110, I probably make 90 to 95. So, am I making every single one? No, but somebody is. My
Right.
husband is or somebody, but my point is 95 out of 110, I've gotta feel good about that. Like, I
Mhm.
can't feel guilty for the
Mhm.
20 that I missed.
Mhm. And it's interesting
And
because
by
if
the way,
you
not
no, exactly. If you get at when I can speak from my own experience, when I get a chance to and I talk to my daughter now, she's 34. And I talk to her
mhm,
and say, "Listen, some things I just couldn't get to, and I'm sorry. I made most of them." She goes, "I knew what was going on, even as a kid." She goes, "Get it? I knew what was going on. I understand. Now I understand. Maybe I would have been a little bit, where is he type of thing. But now understanding what the context was, I get it and I'm okay with it." And I think that if if women look at that and they ground themselves into, you have got to if you don't prioritize yourself, the whole system is not as strong as it should be. So it's an important component to the
absolutely,
whole
and
entire system. Plus the fact that your kids look up to you. So you not having enmeshing your identity in just being a mom, which is not a good thing at all. Just being a mom. Being a mom is great, but you having your complete identity that way, that's the one that the empty nesters when they go bonkers. Because once the kid leaves, then there's no identity anymore. Yeah.
That was my mom too. That was exactly what happened to my mom, and then it was
Yeah.
really hard, but and you know what else is important? Because I think this is important for other people to realize, and again, my son's 17. I listen to him talk about me to his friends if I'm not listening, but I really am listening,
Mhm.
and I think some of the things I've done are some of the things that he's proud of it. Like, I even about the
Yeah.
book that's coming out, he'll be like, "My mom's having a book come out." So that makes me
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing something right because and also, listen, only having 1, only having a boy, I wanna make sure that that this boy is treating a girl
Yes. Most definitely.
he
And
gets
from Yeah, exactly. And thank you for that, by the way, because there's not a lot, but it seems like that's getting worse in terms of that. This is coming from a girl dad because the thing I wanted to make sure was that she was a strong girl, independent, self thinker, and not going to put up with any crap. That's my entire
exactly.
way that I raised her. And she's done a fantastic job, and she met an incredible guy, and they have a great thing going, and they're a great team. So, speaking of all that, I think it's very important to have those components in your life as support components, especially when you're going through transition. Now, talking about transition, you talk about pivoting, which is a part of
Mhm.
transitioning. The big question I get from my clients is, gee, I want to do something different. I'm not happy in what I'm doing, but how do I do it? And I'm like, first of all, what do you want to do? And then they say it. And then I ask the big question, why do you want to do it? So, in your experience, do you ask the why to yourself? And then how do you set up the how?
I think if you're unhappy and you're stuck, there's absolutely no excuse not to put a plan in place to get unstuck because it's up to you to make those decisions. One of the things that I have a really hard time with, especially I have a business, I have a lot of people that work with me. And like self pity to me is have you done something about it? Have you tried to do something about it? Listen, I understand there's lots of times that you can't. However, if there's something that you really are miserable about, you can make those changes. And from the other perspective, like even from a company, I was just saying this to you, companies can't sit back and think, "Oh my god, AI is coming and what are
Yeah.
we gonna do?" and then not
Right.
put a plan in place to deal with that. So it goes on both sides.
Hmm.
But so I give 2 examples. So one major thing that I do, which is when something starts percolating, if you know you're uncomfortable, if you know you're not happy, is what makes you happy and what little things can you put in place to get to the major goal. So, what I do, I have a very structured morning, and sometimes it takes me 6 months, sometimes it takes me 3 months to figure out what direction I wanna go.
Hmm.
But and it also depends on how big or little the pivot is, and that's why, you'll see in the book, it's broken down into 3 different areas, but I'm an early riser, but what I do is I read and write every morning, and then I work out, like, that's my thing, but that reading time and that writing time in the morning is really and it changes all the time of what plan I'm putting in place to get to that ultimate goal or get to that small goal. Let me give you this example. I had a government affairs firm for 10 years and I knew I'm 51 and I knew that I needed to make changes in the firm. So I either needed to hire a couple more people because my business is very relevant of who you know and what you
Oh,
know. And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
you always have to hire new people or you need to make sure
Hmm.
that you're fresh. And so I was to this point of do I hire a bunch of new people? I had a big team, but do I hire more people? Do I merge my firm or do I sell my firm?
Hmm.
And it literally because I knew it was something I had to do and I didn't know when I had to do it. The bottom line is it took me 2 years from that starting to think of that in my mind to actually laying and plan in place I ended up merging with another firm, and it's been wonderful, but I had to bring along because I had all these other people's livelihoods I'm responsible for too. And so it really is a process and preparation to and by the way, 6 months into it, I was gonna sell, and then I decided, "You know what? This isn't gonna work, so I'm gonna do this pivot this way." And so, it's not being so structured, and that's one of the big things that
Yeah.
like, I try to get across in the book. It's really and you probably teach this as coaching. It's not being so structured that if something doesn't work out, you don't turn down into a spiral. You can make a small change and do something different.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. It's a huge point, the fact that sometimes things take longer than you think they will take. And sometimes
Mhm.
things, it's like a blooming flower. You have the bud and you want it to be something and you want it to bloom at a certain time, but it doesn't. Then you get all disappointed and everything crashes to the ground. You bring up another great point, too. It's not a linear journey. It's up,
No.
down, left, right, back 2 spaces, up 3, to the side, and I don't know if you watched the Olympics, the Winter Olympics with Alyssa Liu
Yeah.
and the skating, and, oh god, I
Yep.
love her.
Yep.
She's that's you
Yes.
talk about just zen in the moment. Of course, she got there because she did all the sacrifices and then finally realized, "Okay, I don't have to deal with any of that crap." But her big quote that I love is she said, "I don't mind the failure, I don't mind the struggle because it makes me feel alive." Her focus is on the journey, and, if you feel committed to something, then the journey is where you'll get your energy and your vitality as long as you're not focused on I'm a perfectionist, recovering,
Yeah.
and as a
Yep.
perfectionist, I throw the baby out with the bathwater all the time. Something doesn't work out exactly how I think in my head it should work out. I'm like, "Oh, forget it. It's all a miserable failure," type of thing. I've done a lot better over the last few years, but that was my mentality, and that's a perfectionist mentality, which will kill you every time because it takes you way off because the journey will expose the things you need to be exposed to in order to continue to build.
One of the words I always use is stale. Like, when I feel
Yeah,
stale,
yeah,
I feel that I so this is why when we were talking about this before we started, like, this is why writing the book makes me feel very uncomfortable.
yeah.
Doing a lot of political commentating on TV makes me super uncomfortable. However, when I wake up or when I do something that makes me doing this podcast, it makes you nervous enough, it makes you have to concentrate enough that you don't
Mhm,
feel stale.
mhm.
You don't feel that you're stuck and gives you that nervous energy that everyone thrives on.
Yeah,
And sometimes it makes you completely uncomfortable. But I think taking those little small steps that make you feel uncomfortable to get out of your comfort zone actually lays the groundwork and the preparation for when you have opportunities. And that's just a kind of Tony, but and I always talk about this as my main pivot in my life that really changed my life. And it was I was in the White House on 9/11, and my office was fortunate enough to be in the West Wing, and the Secret Service was evacuating all of us.
mm,
And I decided that day and I was walking out the West Wing lobby, and I decided to make a physical pivot and go back into the building, and I ended up staying there for a couple weeks and
mm,
became the first employee of Homeland Security after 9/11, and
mm,
it really changed that trajectory of my life. And so I didn't know it. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I just remember my boss at the time saying, "You can stay or you can leave, but I can't guarantee for your safety." I think that all those other things of making those decisions that made me uncomfortable throughout even the 27 years really helped me make that quick decision that day to turn back in the building. Now listen, was it a risk? Yes.
mhm,
I knew nothing about Homeland Security after that. It was a whole career I learned, but I
mhm.
think that something gave me the confidence that day to turn around.
There's a psychological there's a bunch of research on that because nobody likes public speaking, right? Nobody likes being nervous about something or exposing themselves or stepping out of their comfort zone. And there's research that shows that if you do an internal pivot, mental pivot, from thinking you're being nervous to thinking you're being excited, which is just a reframing
Oh, interesting. Okay,
of the emotion
interesting.
that comes up. My granddaughter now is playing club soccer, and she's
Mhm.
good, and she enjoys it, and she has a great time. But every game, she's, "God, I know this we're better than this team, but I still feel a little nervous." And I said, "Listen, it's not about being nervous, it's about being excited and excited to play." and
Yes.
go out there. And we talk about just going with the flow and focus and flow. And that's what she thinks about when she goes out there. And I think that has a lot to do with it. You will not expand unless you step out and have that a bit of a feeling. You will not, and you will not improve anything unless you do that. You can certainly sit back, even like the companies with the AI, you can sit back and think, oh, whatever will happen, it'll just come to us and we'll integrate it. No, that's not the way. You have to be proactive and not reactive. And
Absolutely.
right. And I love that. Now, in the
Yeah.
context of pivoting, there's small pivots and big pivots. Can you explain, as we wrap up here, your different
Mhm.
approach to a small pivot versus a big one? And what's the difference between a small and a big? Is that subjective?
No, I actually think a bunch of small pivots lead to the big pivot.
Mhm.
So, like for me, I would say my small pivots using the selling my business or merging my business example, I did small little things along the way. I met with private equity companies. I decided to change that and I'm not going that direction. So I pivoted towards hiring people and that didn't work. I'm just using it as an example, but like
Mhm.
for a
Yeah.
personal reason, I always get these ideas. First of all, when I just want to go back to what you were saying, Tony, isn't it a great feeling when you wake up in the morning? And I think everyone deserves to have these feelings. When you wake up in the morning and there's actually something you're looking forward to it, that excites you to do that day, whether
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
professionally or
Yeah.
personally. I
Mhm.
just think that is what really true living is. And being able to have that feeling is something everyone should work towards and
And
think
set
that
up in their
everyone
own
can. And
life,
I
right?
just
Yeah.
that's what I yeah, exactly. So going back to the tiny pivots are more just to get you to the big pivot, but sometimes you never get to that big pivot because the tiny pivots are enough, but I call them tiny, not small. But my point is that
Mhm.
there's a bunch of little steps along the way. It's not something that just happens overnight, which is why my other big word that I always use is grace, especially in politics, you can imagine, or media, as you can imagine, or other industries. Stepping on people to get to the top is not how to do it. It's to do it with kindness and do it with respect for yourself and respect for others. And that's the really grace part of it because the grit and the courage don't matter if you're burning bridges along the way.
Oh, 100%. Thanks, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Ashley Davis, The Power Pivot with Grit, Grace, and Growth. It is out April the 7th. Ashley, where can you get that and where can people get a hold of you? You have any questions?
Yeah, sure. You can buy it on Amazon or Goodreads. Some bookstores, airport bookstores have it
Oh,
or will
great.
have
That's
it.
awesome.
But yeah, Amazon or Goodreads probably the best. And then all of my Twitter or X account and Instagram and LinkedIn are all Ashley Davis underscore DC.
Perfect. Ashley, thank you so much. That was a great conversation
Thanks. It was great. Yeah.
and best of
I
luck
love what you're
with
doing.
oh, and I love the whole book. It sounds fascinating and I can't wait. I'm glad it's in airports because I don't know, I go to airports and there's the usual stuff. I'm like, I don't want to read that or I've already read it. So it's good that if I see it, I'm definitely getting that because I'm going to Italy in a
Oh,
few
good.
months. And so I'm grabbing that thing. So thanks, Ashley. I appreciate it. For me,
Well,
of course,
great. We'll
it's
have
thank you. You can reach me at tonydufresne.com, but you can't spell that. So you can always go to theconfidencedoc.com and you can reach me by email at tony@theconfidencedoc.com. Go to my website. I got some freebies, or you can just peruse around, especially if you are a woman and you're looking for any coaching, confidence, pivot, just like we talked about today. I hope things are well, and I will talk to you later.